Hey guys, Pastor Matt Chandler here. One of the themes that comes out in The Overcomers over and over and over again is the centrality of God's Word to encourage and build up His saints. It's why I love Dwell Bible app. It's an app for listening. I kind of use it in the margins of my day. I like to listen to, depending on my mood, Mark or Felix. Throw on some ambient music, and then in my truck or in my study or in a few minutes between this meeting going into that, soak again in the Word of God. They've given us kind of an awesome deal here for a yearly subscription. If you go to dwellbible.com/overcomers, they're giving us 25% off an annual subscription. So if you're looking for more Bible in your life, in the margins of your life, not just kind of traditionally listening, but listening while you work, listening while you drive, I couldn't recommend the Dwell Bible app more highly.
Because all that hope in me, seeing the life leave his body was I was shattered in a way that I didn't know it could be.
Well, welcome back to The Overcomers. I have been eager to sit down with you two. And I just have been eager for you to be able to testify to the presence of God. And we were just talking about this. Now, I think loss of a child, for everything else we cover, is that thing that nobody thinks they would survive. Nobody thinks they would make it to the other side of. And not presuming, that we're all the way to the other side of anything. Maybe you don't ever get to the other side, or you get to the other side in a kind of a strange way. So this is Jack and Ashlee Drake. They've been longtime members of the Village Church, have served really in a lot of different places, primarily recovery ministry for a long time. Beautiful family, faithful couple. And I just want to start by talking about Abram, and really maybe the first time. Well, let me just say that Abram was vivacious and wicked sharp and a lover of life and ninja swords and combat and all things little boy. And so I'd love for you to just talk about like that, the first time you notice, hey, something's not right. And then we'll kind of set out on this journey from there.
Yeah, so he was 6 years old when he got diagnosed, and leading up to diagnosis in early January 2020, we had a slew of doctor's visits of all sorts of things. Kind of looking backwards, I mean, we got 4 kids, so
yeah,
we weren't worried. We'd seen a lot of stuff.
Lot of sickness.
A lot of sickness, and it's okay, and it's fine, and these are just things that you go through, and we're not going to freak out about them. But Abram was, he had started kindergarten, and progressively through that semester, he was just having more and more trouble with pain, with discomfort, and lots of doctor's visits. But
yeah, he had a bunch of pain in like his lower back was.
Yeah, and we were like, growing pains, and then the doctor's like, well, it could be meningitis, it could be this and that, and then maybe there's a blockage in his intestines, and that's why he can't go to the bathroom.
That was the earliest sign. That was our
just
him being backed up.
And so if you look at that, you're like, man, he was having some of those issues back into like Easter that previous year, which at the time we totally dismissed. You're like,
Sure.
all right, whatever. It
happens.
Yeah, it happens. Like,
well, with 4 kids, it does have there's. I mean, I had 3.
Yeah.
And somebody always had a cold.
Yeah.
Somebody was always sick.
Right.
Somebody was always bringing something into the house that kind of spread through the house. So, yeah.
And and then all of a sudden it got to the part where it's like round the clock, Advil, Tylenol, and he is miserable, just a lot of pain.
And this is all while we're in and out of the doctor consistently. I mean, I'm there at least once a week at this point for the last probably 2 months before he got diagnosed.
Yeah, and Ashlee's mama radar was freaking out. Like, something's not right here.
Yeah.
And I don't. And I mean, we don't blame those doctors for missing it at all, because neuroblastoma is such a sneaky, hard to find cancer, and it doesn't present until.
Unless you do a CT scan, really.
Yeah, and like it's normally late in the game where, people find out.
Almost all, like, I don't know what the statistic is. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but most kids are stage 4 when they're diagnosed.
When they find it.
I mean, that's just the way it operates.
And so finally he was in enough pain. We took him to an after hours, urgent care basically. And then we think that doctor there felt something and shipped us off to big hospital over the weekend.
He said he thought it was just a blockage, but looking back, I'd be surprised if he wasn't more worried, but didn't want to freak us out before sending us to the ER. Yeah,
and then so over the weekend, lots of tests and more tests, and then finally it was, hey, we've got you scheduled to meet with oncology, and we're like, oncology and children don't go together. I don't ever want to hear that. And man, I remember just walking out of that ER and I was like, Lord, like, whoa, this, it's not what I said, but that's what, so yeah, quickly it was, we're paying attention. We're like, all right, Abram, kind of get it together. Then it was a whirlwind and the wheels are off just completely. And we're, when they do get a beat on what's going on, it's, the worst possible news.
Yes.
Yeah, that first week is when we were, like, they admitted us straight from the ER. And so just, it's test after test. And so it's starting off like, it could be cancer, it could be something else. And then we find out it's for sure cancer. Then it could be this cancer, it could be that cancer. And you find out it's neuroblastoma, which is the one the doctor before was like, you don't want it to be that one. And I'm like, okay, so this is where we're at. And then from there, it's, finding the best doctor and transferring hospitals and getting a port. And I mean, it was 2 weeks really of being admitted. And then, I mean, for me, one of the hardest parts was when we found out it was stage 4. I mean, I just remember physically, like, I was non-functional finding that out. Like, my son should not have stage 4 cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the thing about neuroblastoma, like, specifically, I mean, younger kids definitely have a higher survival rate. Abram was very unique at being as old as he was to have neuroblastoma. And the odds go down in terms of survival the older you are. And so, I mean, I think when he first got diagnosed, we were told 60% survival rate, which for me, like, I could cling to that. I mean, and I think one of the things, we say this a lot, like, one of the most impactful things that we learned at the very beginning, because we were both spiraling. Jason Holloman actually he walked pretty closely with us through it all, and he had come up there and he said, Abram is invincible until the day God calls him home. And so just specifically with cancer, there's so much stuff around it of, like, survival. I mean, that, like, survival rates and all this stuff, but yet, like, our God ultimately holds the cards.
Hold our days.
Yeah, and just because you're so scared, and you're this future that you've hoped and dreamed of with your child gets threatened into this degree that is unconscionable. Like, you're just having that word levied over us. Like, I mean, he's not going to die today.
Yeah.
He's got a fight ahead of him, and that sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, invincible is the word. He is invincible until Lord calls him home. And
then we clung tight the whole time.
It really freed us up to, like, okay, we got today. And honestly, it was, just good being with Abram, because there he is. He's full of his full life. And
he started feeling better pretty quick. I mean, that first round of chemo shrunk that, like, the initial tumor.
Yeah.
The hard part was getting rid of it everywhere else in the body. And so just to see our son kind of bounce back to not be in pain was huge. I mean, there's all the chemo stuff that, that sucks. But I mean, to speak to even what you said at the beginning of, like, I mean, where I was at, like, I went like when we first found out, it was completely non-functional. And I just remember saying, when I was talking to Lauren on the phone, just like, I can't do this. I mean, there's no framework to understand losing a child. And so, I mean, that's where I started. I mean, I can't do this. And so.
And talk a little bit about, like, even in my own journey, and then in journeys that I've walked with people on, there is in regards to our faith and our relationship with the Lord, there is an initial kind of, he's got this. I've got some Bible verses.
Oh, all the Bible verses.
Everybody's praying. It feels like the whole world's praying for you. People you've never met, people you never, everybody's like, we're praying. There's bracelets. There's like the whole world rallies. And there's a season in which you're like, the Lord's got this.
We had experienced some loss, some tragedy, but it was, like my aunt and uncle, her grandparents, but nobody, we didn't, our lives were not marked with lots of trauma or loss.
Yeah.
And so, to that point, there was a real, like, okay. And as this boy's daddy, like, I was like, all right, it's time to fight. Like, and that's what you made me to do. And, I won't shrink back from that. But to that, like, we were just like, okay, all right, we got everybody's rallying, the church is showing up, everybody's showing up, family, just like
they have a great family, but literally everyone descends. There's a lot of people,
and just managing all of that was overwhelming on top of what we were already doing, but there was a real sense of like, okay, I mean, the 60% survival rate was helpful for Ashlee, but I was like, I really don't care about your statistics because I got an Abram. I don't have a statistic.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a negative thing, but I was like, I mean, the Lord's going to do this. And that was not to get far ahead, but just in that place of like, this is what God does. He shows up when it's awful.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a broken, fallen world. Yep, all in, get that. But He's still going to save my son.
Yeah.
And I'm angry that my son's going to have to suffer to do that. That we are going to have to suffer. But it's like I said, I don't have a choice. This is how we move forward. And we're grateful for all the support.
We were I really got to experience in that season the church being the church, like in a way that I've never seen.
Yeah.
I mean, just the support and, just being rallied around. But we were told at the very beginning, though, like, I mean, that's the most it's going to be. And that we definitely saw that, everyone rallies and not in any negative way. I mean, that's human nature and,
Life
everyone's
goes on.
life goes on and ours didn't, so then we're still in it and it's a marathon, not a sprint. And
Yeah.
I will say for me, like having that hit me, because it was kind of like, Lord, you don't touch this. Like you do what you, but this is out of bounds. And so there was that kind of in me of like, no, this can't happen.
Yeah.
And that was I'd never sat there before.
Yeah.
Of like, I mean, it's like, you do what you want to me and whatever, but not my boy.
I've said, it'll even be hard for me to say it now, but like when I woke up in the hospital room on that Thanksgiving morning, 2009, and the ER doc said, hey, you've got a mass in your right frontal lobe and we're going to need to send you need to go find a neurosurgeon and see about what to do about that. I just remember thinking, okay, it's me.
Yeah.
I can do me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do Lauren. I don't know if I could do the kid. I can do me. So just to bounce off what you're saying, I mean, I remember thinking, okay, if it's me, I can do that. I just can't just leave the rest of the circle alone.
Right.
So I had the same same thing going on in my heart, but it was me.
Yeah.
So I just can relate to that emotion.
You were more mad initially than I was.
I was furious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to that point, but we kind of were always at different spots a little bit.
Yeah.
But.
And then tell me about like Abram had this kind of faith and awareness, and it in fact, of all the kind of journeys I've been able to participate in at some level, Abram seemed to have be dialed into the Lord more than most, and not just regurgitating y'all stuff.
Oh no.
Like a whole different thing. So talk a little bit about Abram in the early days in that, or was that something that kind of gave birth through this?
No, he was steady, steadfast the whole time. He was not scared. I mean, he was in a lot of pain and didn't like pokes and medicines, and all that was brutal. However,
but he wasn't like scared of dying, or like he never once in the entire journey, and this was totally the Lord, and it was such a gift to me. Like he never once asked me, am I going to die?
Yeah.
And for me, like because from the beginning, we were like, we're going to be honest with them, like, scans. And I mean, to a degree with, obviously there's stuff around that, but with our other kids, with him, I wanted to be safe. Like I wanted them to be able to trust me. And so, for me, that was such a gift. I mean, he wasn't scared.
Yeah.
And just to speak to, I mean, that kid, even before he got sick, I mean, his favorite thing was to sing his God songs. Like he just wanted to sing to Jesus. And like, that's not like, it wasn't songs that we knew. Like he would just make up words. And I mean, singing about his heart. And I think it got amplified for sure in that season. But that's one of the things I think that we look at. I mean, he carried us through a lot of that. Looking at him and his faith, I mean, he would every night, like, I want to read the Bible stories. I want to do this. Like he encouraged us more so than I think we encouraged him, because his faith was just
he was
from the Lord, and we didn't do that. Like that was
like I mean, early on, because a lot of this was pandemic times, so the hospital was very much shut down. But there was a lady that would come around with a guitar, and she's like, what do you want to sing? He's like, I want to sing Jesus Loves Me. And she's like, okay. And
I don't think she was a believer either.
No. She knew the song, but he had they gave him a little like drum kit, so he was playing along with her, and he really, his empathy and his heart for the Lord, despite, because I mean, as awful as it was for us, we knew it was worse for him.
Yeah,
and to have him not freak out, fall apart, it was like, well, I can't do it if he's not,
Yeah,
because I think as much as we wrestled with the Lord, and that looked different throughout this whole journey, and there's a lot there, but to look at my son and see that he didn't. I mean, he just didn't question God in it. I mean, even I remember this one time, and it was probably one of the worst experiences we had there. Like he had to do this one immunotherapy that is insanely painful. So watching him, literally, I mean, he is screaming in pain. And I'm having to sit there and hold him and just say, you have to do this. And that, as a parent, is it's a nightmare. And so, but I remember him like crying out to God, and just literally, he's like, the doctors can't help me. No one can help me. Only you can help me, God. And I will tell you, to this day, I still wrestle with this, because God didn't take it away right then. Because I remember literally just crying over him. I'm just like God, I know you can do this. I still believe he could have, and I don't understand why he didn't. Because why he could have in a second, And so this kid crying out in faith, but even that, like he wasn't deterred afterwards. Like that didn't change. That didn't stop. And
no bitterness. And when she says painful, it was like watching your child get lit on fire and writhe in pain for 8 hours.
Neuroblastoma is a nervous system cancer, so it's a very painful cancer.
But he absolutely was. He's like, Lord,
God can do it.
And you're just like, man, everything in my heart wants to step in, and whatever I could do for my child, just to watch him, and then to see him cry out to God, and I'd be like, man, Lord, like I don't understand. This boy knows and trusts that you are his only hope, and I just want to see you show up.
And God did show up. It just wasn't, I mean,
not that
That
way.
that's so evident in the whole story for me. Like even when I wrestled of God being present, like I can see it. Like he was so near my son every second. And I know he was near me, but sometimes I had a really hard time seeing it. But Abram didn't. Like there's parts of this story. I mean, Abram will tell you about the angels he'd saved with the sword. And I mean, he was very gifted in the Lord, and that was not anything I don't think that we did, because that wasn't stuff we talked about necessarily at that time. I mean, we've definitely probably shifted more there. But at that time, like he's not learning that from us. And this is God meeting him. And so even though a lot of our story was not answered how we wanted it to be, there's no way you could ever say God wasn't there.
Yeah.
And that is, there's grounding in that for me looking at it, despite all the wrestles.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, it really was what made Abram's story unique. I mean, having walked this journey, like his faith.
Yeah.
That's to me, even as I think about him from time to time now, that's the like astonishing. So you start treatment, and initially it goes well. Talk a little bit more about kind of the treatment journey, because it's also, man, it's during COVID. There's all sorts of rules, like only one parent, maybe at a time. All the stuff that I would think I'm incapable of enduring without being violent.
No, we were robbed of a lot because of COVID. And
it's hard not to be really angry about all of it, and everybody's doing the best they can. But in those journeys, you know, what Abram desired was his family, and we were limited to after April of that year.
Yeah, we had a couple months where like kids could come up, and he loved having Ezra come up, and he loved having that. And after that it was one person until he got put on. I mean, basically when he got hospice, they made exception for us, but it was still, I mean, he missed out on time with his dad. He missed out on time with his siblings, and because I was going to be there.
You ain't keep mama out the room.
No.
He wanted me there.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He loves his daddy, but mama's different.
Yeah, he's always happy to see me, but he needed mom, so.
I believe that.
So we diagnosed early January, and then chemos through about April of that year. And then, the chemo regimen, I think, is pretty normative to folks that have been down that journey. It's just nuke your system, watch him kind of bottom out, and then watch him recover, and then hope to go home. And then now I got a fever. Now we got to go back to the ER, and it's so hard as a parent, because it's such a grind. Because even in your off weeks, you've got to go up there. He's got to get blood drawn. He's got to get a poke, which he hated.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hate it, so that's pretty normal. But and so right through the end of that frontline treatment is when the COVID world just kind of stopped everything, because we were worried about. They were talking about he had that original tumor that we needed to remove surgery-wise, and there was this rumor that non-essential surgeries might get put on the docket, and we were like freaking out, because
like ours was on the line. I mean, like, which I'm like, how the heck is that not essential? I mean, it was like had to get approved through this whole process.
Yeah,
just
just to that, like, man, I'm about to go
crazy,
burn something down. If it's this is he and it worked out. And I think we had a team that really fought for Abram, and
they did.
I'm really grateful for them, and it went forward and all that. But just those little milestones along the way, because after that first line of treatment, we had the surgery, and we did a scan, and it showed progress, but not a lot. Like you really. At this point, Ashlee's starting to get connected to, through social media, through other families on this journey, and she's got an idea in her head of like the best outcomes kind of look this way, and ours.
Most time, you're like the way they do neuroblastoma is like a Curry score. So we started at 19, and I think at this point we're at a 12.
Yeah, and
that's like the level of cancer. And like most time by this point, like kids like long-term survival are at like a 2 or 3.
Yeah,
and so I mean it's not. we're not going the wrong direction, but it was the
Yeah.
beginning of continuing to get bad news. Like, scans.
Well, something you told us was, even if it's not good news, even if it's just negative, just celebrate
That we did it.
Yeah.
and that we weren't. Yeah,
We
and
lived that. We took that to heart. I mean,
Yeah.
it was
Oh,
every
it's
time.
a weird world when stable
Yes.
is good news.
super weird because
You got to celebrate the wins.
Yeah,
like
you do.
you have to celebrate
do.
what you. That's how you get through.
I mean that thought from your head is never far of worrying about what's next. But if you don't take those little moments to, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but like it just
go out to
celebrate. Like, hey, there's some progress here, and those were very important. But the journey was one where it never. We were always kind of making incremental progress, but it wasn't the winning game plan that we had seen with other survivors.
Okay.
And so we follow the regiment through that summer. Things are super weird because he had what they call transplant, where basically they nuke his immune system back down to, like, chemo takes you down to 0. This is like the reset button.
Yeah.
It takes out everything, good, bad. I mean, it is chemo, but it's like tenfold.
Yeah.
And then they feed your own stem cells, like the healthy stem cells, back to you.
Okay.
to rebound.
Recover.
And that was super hard because his immune system's so fragile. Like, they're a lot more restrictive on access. And so for 6 weeks at a time, I wouldn't see my son because he was in the hospital in Ashlee, and a grandmother would rotate.
Yeah.
And
Our whole summer was pretty much spent living at the hospital.
yeah. And so I think it was the second time he got home from transplant, and he's wiped. And our community was so sweet. Like, we'd always have a big celebration at the house in the front yard.
Yeah.
Like, you're home. And Abram hated it. He
Did not like all the attention.
He hated
Which made
it.
me feel really loved, but like, he's like, I just want to go be with my family. I want to go inside.
And so by the
did.
end of it, everybody was so sweet. They would just stand and silently and kind of wave. And,
It was.
but like the cheering and he was like, I'm out on this.
Good.
We always appreciated it, but it was hard. Not his favorite, but I do remember that. I think it was the second time we got home. It's July, I think, and hot. And we roll out of the car, and he's his brother, Eli, trying to, I think he's on a tricycle or something like that.
Yeah, he's on a bike.
On a bike, and Abram hopped out, and he wanted to go help his brother and
And he has
push
nothing
him.
at this point, but
He was so happy to be home. He was so happy to be around his siblings. And that was just his heart. He just wanted to help his little brother. And I think Eli was 3 at the time.
he had just turned, he was.
Yeah. So he was always, it was very hard to get too upset when you'd watch him endure and fight. And because one of the things I learned, and I knew this, but just to watch him, like, it's not brave to do something when you're not scared. It's brave to do it when you're scared to death. And he would really trust us. And it's hard as a parent to lead him into those places of pain, but you're hoping these places of pain gives you, the greater goal. But he would. But he was, every time, even just a blood draw, like, you just, anxiety and fear and but he would, okay, Dad, and he'd push through, and I was just so proud of him. I was so proud of him, the way he would fight, and I think about that a lot. Even for us now, it's just like we've got to keep fighting.
Yeah.
And the fight is the word. It's not. It is gritty, crawl. I was telling Ashlee the analogy I think of is like in the Rocky movies, where he's standing up with his hands up in the end, but just as he's just beat to death, and then just barely crawling off the mat, and that's what I think
Yeah, our story looks like.
Yeah.
It's very accurate depiction.
So as it becomes, like, when does it start to become apparent? I mean, you've got some foreshadowing, right? We're at a 12. We probably needed to be at a 2, but let's celebrate the 12. It's something.
Yeah.
When does it start to, like, like, this is, unless there's some kind of insane miracle, this isn't going our way? When does that start to shift? Like, it's not like this might. It's not like 12, maybe next time we'll get to that 2. This is, oh man, we've nuked a system 3 times. It's right back. We're throwing everything common grace has at this, and it is not responding the way we are hoping.
Well, so what happened was the incremental progress, but not what we've seen. And then all of a sudden, late that year, we started a new treatment. It's part of the regimen, is immunotherapy. And all of a sudden, he went from like a 11 or 12 down to a 2. We're like, whoa.
That was one good skin we got, and we definitely celebrated.
Went hard.
Went hard. We went down to Dallas, El Braca, with my buddy Matt down there, and took care of us. And and so that, I mean, we're so scared. And then great news. And so right at the end of December, we go into another scan, and we're thinking, hey, we're about to see a 0.
Yeah. We're gonna go into the new year, and it's gonna,
like, hell yes, like, we're kicking ass. We're gonna
He's feeling a lot better during this, and that was such a gift.
Yes, and like, finally we got this thing on the run, and then we go in for that scan, and it's another 2, but it's the worst kind of 2 because they're new spots.
Okay.
And from the beginning, our oncologist was very honest. She's like, I don't want to see new. Like, so basically it mutated.
Yeah.
And from then we're playing catch up. And so that was the first time where, I mean, so it was really like that whole first year went through, the normal process. And then after that, the next, like, as we go into the next year in 2021, it was, there were 2 like hope-filled things that we had heard good results about. So the actual, there's something there. Like, it could be good, but we did both of those, and still just, that was really the point where there was not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was not really much left to try.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not unlike other cancers. It's kind of just snowballs all of a sudden. And once we got the new, I mean, we were just gut shot. I mean, that was like right at New Year's of 21, and it was horrible because we're trying not to. Well, we were so hopeful, and we're like, okay, like, we've got so many people praying.
Well, most scans, I feel like we had an idea, like, it wasn't going to be as good. You know what I mean? I feel like most of the time we kind of had an idea, and that was the only one I think we were like, it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then so there were a couple of other things in the arsenal to throw at it. So we weren't like, there's no hope. But as we went through those, and we still were not moving the right direction, it got increasingly scary. And then, and then at this point, he's 7, and he had really rebounded pretty well through all his treatments, and would look, I mean, other than no hair, he looked.
We had a feeding tube,
but just his body composition was fairly. I mean, he's probably a little lean, but he'd always been skinny, so it was. He looked fairly normal, but then through that spring, like, we'll look at pictures now, and you can see him start to deteriorate, and it's.
Yeah, it's harder looking back at those. It's interesting because I think in it we're just still fighting so much, and it's a day to day, and there's stuff now that comes up, and it's shocking.
Well, and even like if you come out of a major surgery and then you get better and better from that surgery, there's still a bit of a like hard to like, what was it before? Like, so even if I think about, like, I had my 8-hour surgery, and then I was feeling better and feeling normal, and people would comment on me looking good But then if I look back at those pictures, we look back at those pictures, it's the same thing. We're like,
Yeah.
oh gosh, I'm looking. But at the time, you're comparing it to, oh my gosh, that first moment you see after surgery, that first moment after the round of chemo, or that. So I'm not comparing it to my former healthy self anymore, because I don't even, honestly, 6 months in, you don't even remember what that is.
Yeah.
And so it's a hard thing. So it's not surprising for me to hear you say you look at the pictures now and go, oh, dang it. But at the time, you're not comparing it to healthy Abram.
No.
You're comparing it to where we're coming from in this journey, which starts low. And, so any little uptick, you're like, he looks great. But then it's not surprising to me now that you look back and go, oh, guy, he looks tired.
And there were he just had a funny way of saying things. So like one of the treatments he had to do is like this super intense radiation. So he'd have to go in a room by himself for several days. Like
he had to be completely isolated. Like I was in a room outside and they give him this, I don't even know what it is, insane levels of radiation. Like I had to wear a hazmat suit to go in and help him. So I could see him and talk to him. But like even the nurses don't really go in there except once a day. Like the mom goes in or whoever's the caretaker. And I mean, you have to sign all this stuff of, what you're exposing yourself to. And I mean, it was crazy. And he did so good though.
Except,
I think I know where you're going.
Yeah. So he hated the catheter.
I believe that.
He called it, he told the doctor every time after, he's like, I'll do it. Do not give me that penis straw again.
Penis straw?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what he called penis straw. And it just makes me giggle when I think about it. 'Cause I'm like, yeah, I mean, nobody likes a catheter.
That was the only thing.
No.
Like he did so good except that.
He's
It was.
I swear, if you try and put that penis straw back in me, like,
But
I'm
they
out.
had to do it because the levels of radiation, and then they have to I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. So he did get, like, he played on his iPad and he made it through that. And but it was, I mean, you're just so used to that world that you're never ever supposed to get used to.
Yeah, that should.
It's like, yeah, of course I got to leave my kid alone. I mean, he could see us and he wasn't like scared, but it's just those levels of normal are so brutal. And
Well, they're not supposed to be normal, but
Yeah.
when you're in it,
and even, we had grandparents and but as the parents, there's no break. You don't get to go home and recharge. You're just in it.
Well, and you've got 3 other kids.
Yeah.
and that was a hard thing to balance. And we did the best we could with it, but it is hard because there's always going to be this season that I really missed out on with the other kids. I was there as much as possible, but at the same time, our kids were raised by grandparents for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
To a degree. And that's hard.
Yeah.
And I don't get that back. And
No.
that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could think about who you're comfortable raising your kids, and they had 3 different sets of parents basically for 2 years,
which they're all amazing, but
everybody has their own
it's
parenting
hard when
style.
it's
So
all
it's
different.
true. It was a mess, but we were grateful for it. Like, we're not
we couldn't have done
complaining for sure, but it was just the realities of it all were crazy. And then, we had our crew of support in it. The big onslaught, like we kind of talked about, of everybody, hey, what can I do? Hey, that's waned at this point, but we still felt very cared for. And
I didn't cook for almost 2 years, which was great because
Okay.
I hate cooking. Literally, the church showed up. There was just constantly.
yeah, I didn't have to worry about my grass. I didn't have to worry about my pool. I didn't.
We were very loved.
And financially, we were
Very supported.
very supported, and just to see the body show up in that way, that's something we won't forget. And we go to a big church, but we were in the same home group for, I think it was 8 or 9 years at that point, and we felt connected. But to see the rally was so cool. And I hated that was the reason I was seeing it, but we have remarked of, like, I can't imagine somebody traveling that without a community behind them, and particularly, like, Because if you just say like, yeah, there's people in the fight with you, and I think that's true, but just to have a body behind you crying out on your behalf, because like, I mean, you're so tired, and as a parent, like it's even hard to pray. You're like, Lord, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
But just to know when somebody's, not everybody, but when we would hear from people like, hey, we're really praying. I'm like, and it just gave me so much comfort of, I'm so glad they're taking up the fight where I'm not sure I can right now.
Sure.
And that was awesome.
One of the ways we're able to bring these stories to you is by partnering with organizations that I've grown to trust and appreciate and love over the last couple of years. The Dwell Bible app, if you followed my ministry, you know I've mentioned it before. It's just one of my favorite tools, like in my own devotional life, in my own study life, to find more ways to hear the Word of God, to absorb the Word of God, to have the Word of God top of mind for me. And so I've used it devotionally. I've used it in regards to just, I'm currently studying the book of Daniel. And so all day today, I've had the Daniel read by Mark with ambient music in the background playing on my phone in my truck as I, walked outside a little bit earlier this morning, just finding ways to have the Word of God absorbing into my system, and the design, the beauty of the app, the various kinds of music that can play under, the accents that can go to. There are so many aspects of the app that could serve to stir your affections for Jesus, depending on preference and desire. And so I commend the Dwell Bible Study app to you. Hey guys, Pastor Matt here with my beautiful bride, Lauren Chandler, and we are excited to partner with Compassion International in this season of The Overcomers. Really, I think we have sponsored a child almost the entirety of our marriage, which is coming up on 25 years. And so we love Compassion International, not just because they've got this stated mission that we want to rescue children out of poverty in Jesus's name, but it's really how they go about doing that that drew our hearts to Compassion. One, they're serious about the child. They want to make sure the child is fed and has clean drinking water and has medical services available and the best education possible. But then on top of that, it's always a community project with Compassion through a local church. So all of those things are happening in a community through a local church. And by doing it that way, the entire community begins to be transformed over time.
If you'd like to be a part of giving a hope and a future to a child and transforming a community, you can text Overcomers to 83393, or you can go to compassion.com/overcomers.
In your own individual relationships with the Lord, are you staying like just hot through most of this?
I think probably not. I was not in the details of, like, Ashlee was the researcher. She knew all the stories. And so that was really difficult for me because I always felt like when I'd hear something, it kind of projected onto what we were doing. And I was like, well, that don't really have anything to do with Abram, because he's an Abram. He's not a whoever else. And then just to see the community we had behind us, all people around the world just praying. I really thought the Lord was going to save him. I really did. And I wasn't deterred even by bad news, because I'm like, well, every story I read, he's showing up at, or even like with Lazarus, it's already past go, right? Like it's already done. And so I wasn't overly scared, whereas Ashlee was different.
Yeah, we were very different in that.
Yeah.
But even with the Lord, like for me at the beginning, I mean, he felt safe, and I really feel like I got to lean on him. And then I kind of went through the period where I was mad.
Yeah.
And it actually took Katie Dang at the time posted something, and I think maybe a year out from having lost their son.
Yeah.
And it was truly my breaking point with the Lord throughout the whole process. And it was a really sweet thing for God to use. But she just wrote something like, on that side, God was still good. Like, I can tell you that even now without her son, she was like, but God's still good and he's still here. Because for me, when I was mad, like, that's where I was like, you can't take him and still be good.
Yeah.
But like that, I mean, that was my breaking. And that was when the Lord at least became safe again. I'll tell you, even on this side of it, I've gone through, I mean, there's been plenty of seasons where I'm mad. Me and God have it out a little bit. And so it doesn't stay there, but it was a changing point for me. But just to speak to what he was saying too, I mean, we process, it was so different. I mean, and this was unique for us because we've always, I mean, we talk about everything. Like, we communicate. It's a gift, like in our marriage, and it's something that I'm very thankful for. But when your son is sick and dying, like you can't always share all your fears. You can't always, because the other person's struggling. And so we had to really relearn how to do that in marriage. And so, for me, I wanted to know all the facts. And I really started grieving before Abram passed. I mean, I was a lot more, whereas Jack held on to more hope. And I mean, like, I had hope. Like, I knew God could do it. It wasn't that, but just a very more practical in my mind of like, but I don't know that he's going to.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's going to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
I was.
It was different.
Like, there just wasn't. And so I was.
But that was harder for you on the back end because then when you didn't,
for sure.
I mean, that's a hard.
For sure. But yeah, I was like, man, like, what are the point of these stories? Like the point, like, you're the hero. You swoop in and you do what. When everybody says, because I was just like, the doctors are getting more and more grim, and I'm like, that's all right. I
got you, Lord.
The Lord's on my side.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what you say. And I really was there, and not with like, I'm not going to do anything. I was like, I'm going to fight with everything I got, and that was true. But I was like, man, the Lord's, he's going to do this. Like, I just couldn't see a way without all the prayers, all the hope, and then just Abram, just like, man, this little boy's got something to give this world that I don't have to give, but he sure does. And golly, and I was expectant. I really was, and so I wasn't. Initially, it was fear, anger, and then it was like, okay, we're gonna fight, and you're gonna be glorified, and it's gonna be. It's going to be that. From
the beginning, like, we were very different, but the one thing I think we both did and both focused on a lot was, I mean, I remember, it might have been the week Abram got diagnosed, but just telling God, matter of fact, I'm like, okay, God, if you're going to make us walk this, you're going to dang well use it. Like, and so, I think one of the things for us is vulnerability is easier for us. And that's, I think, part of why we were drawn to each other. And so, from the beginning, we're sharing, but we're, like, we had a caring bridge, and so we would just share. We would share our story, but in a way that I wanted, like, people to see, like, the mess, but also that God was there. That was the one thing I think that unified us throughout. But how that looked, we would take turns. And the Lord was gracious most of the time at being at different places where he'd be, really struggling with God, or I'd be struggling with God. And thankfully that didn't line up too much. When it did line up, it's always harder. And so
low.
Yes.
Super low.
It's not good. But just to, that we fought together, like, with God. Like, we're like, okay, like, we're going to share our story because we know God's here, but we wanted to show that it's messy, that it's not always like, because that's been a struggle with me my whole life. Like, I don't do well with the story just that's like tied up in a perfect little bow at the end. Because I'm like, that's not how it feels to me. Even now, like, I'm like, I'm going to fight. I'm going to get off the mat. But at the same time, it doesn't, there's days where I'm like, I don't get out of bed. Like, there's, my hope is always to have more of the good, like, fight for more of the good. But there's some days I don't have the fight. And so that's just, I wanted that to be seen in our story. And it's what we kind of tried to do. And
and it was helpful to even journal through those times, because it made me consider the horror and the tragedy, but it was still not without hope. Like, it was always with hope, and not in anything other than the Lord, because I knew, like, even though I wasn't in all the details, I knew you just see your doctor's faces change. Like,
Yeah.
and they're not giving you options. You know, I was angry at that, but I was still like, I've got hope. Like I've got the Lord for sure. And I still do, but it was different then.
Yeah.
A very different way to engage the Lord for sure.
Let's talk about that, maybe that last couple of weeks of Abram's life. And one, like where he is, both just with the Lord and with y'all, and then where you guys are. And why don't you take us up to that moment where he gets to get out of this pain and hurt and go to this Jesus that he's been singing about and loving and telling other people about and excited to be with. And so why don't we talk about that last couple of weeks?
Yeah, so as things are progressing negatively, I remember taking him out of the hospital in July. We were doing mid-treatment because, like, I could see, like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I knew what I was putting him through was not helping.
Yeah.
It was the first time that had happened where it wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Like mid-treatment, I was like, we're done. And there were still some things we were trying to throw against it. But as far as like a chemo and immunotherapy, and it was kind of like a mix that we were doing. And I was like, this isn't helping, and it's hurting my son, so we're done.
Which we had seen in scans.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's the line of how much you can extend his life versus, the pain versus the cost. And so trying to navigate that is really where we're at that point. And so this was, I think, the breaking point of like, it's not worth the pain that, and the sick, like, all the stuff that comes from chemo, that it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
And even then we still, like we'd gotten put on hospice in June, and he rallied.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
Yeah, you came down. And
Yeah, I remember that.
The elders and Lauren and
Yeah,
prayed.
there were like 3 hospital visits where we didn't know if we were going home.
We're talking to palliative care, and that was awful.
I remember the palliative care conversation.
We fired them.
Yeah. Oh, I remember.
Yeah. And then, but then he rallies and we go home.
Yeah.
We take him to the beach July 4th. He spends a week at the beach, and it's not easy. Like, I don't want to paint that picture. He's in a lot of pain, but he was so excited to be there.
We did what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like we kind of just started living for and that's it. If he wanted to do it, we were going to make it happen.
We're going to say yes.
So
We got like a good 6-8 weeks. I mean, I've got video of him swimming in the pool.
Yeah.
Like full range of motion. Like it just, and it really, in me, I was like, man, Lord, you're doing it. Like this makes no sense for where we're talking palliative care 3 weeks ago, and he's swimming in my pool right now. And then probably 1st of August, he's got cancer just everywhere, and it's in his skull, and it starts swelling.
And you can see them now. Like at this point, there's them.
Like his head is very misshapen, and all the pressure of the cancer, he actually goes blind, loses his sight because of the behind his eyes, and
That was hard.
yeah, I mean, it was so hard.
I mean, I remember the morning that we, because at this point he's in a hospital bed in our room, like right next to me, and I remember waking up because we knew he'd been struggling with vision, like it had been getting worse, and we had been trying to put like readers on him and just do stuff to help. And we wake up and he's like, I can't see anything. We're like, you can't see anything? Like, and it was just gone.
Yeah.
It's dark. Yeah. Man, that felt cruel.
Yeah. And I still wrestle with the Lord on that, honestly. Like I do. But he didn't.
No. Like even when Abram would pray, he never prayed for himself. This is during Delta is making its wave, and I had some family members with Delta. I was like, hey, buddy, you want to make a video and just send him? He's like, hey, I'm so sorry, I'm praying for you. And when he prayed at night, he's not like Lord, let me see. It's like we would pray for that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But open his eyes, Lord.
But the way we talk too, so like at this point, even how we're talking to him, like we're always honest, but I'm like, the Lord is going to heal you. I mean, that was never, I'm like, and I knew that was true. I mean, because it might not be how, obviously we wanted it. But yeah, one of my favorite videos was during this time. He had lost his sight and he wanted to make a video for his school because he missed all the people at school. And literally on the video, we actually put this on his headstone. He says, I hope Jesus is taking care of you. Jesus is taking care of me. And I'm just like, this kid in so much pain and blind. And I mean, this whole head, he can't eat or keep anything down really at this point. And he's just like, I hope Jesus is taking care of you. Jesus is taking care of me. And I'm like, I mean, I didn't feel like at that point, like, I mean, I was, honestly at that point, I was so focused on just managing his pain. Like, I can't even really tell you, honestly, where I was at. Because it was such survival of just.
Well, you're delirious because it's.
We're not sleeping. We're not
round the clock care. He's in a ton of pain, but just his hope and like I've got a video of him delirious out of his mind singing
all pain meds,
a God song.
Yeah,
I mean there was so much hard in all of it. Like we talked about, watching him get effectively lit on fire. That was absolutely brutal. But one of the other ones is. That last time we took him to the hospital, because he was starting to swell, and when we go, we take him in, and the doctor's basically like, well, his body's shutting down. Mm-hmm. That's what that means. It's just not. It's like your body prioritizes air, then food, and then right now it can't process.
But he has a feeding tube, so we're still like, he couldn't eat probably for the last couple of months at all. I mean,
he started eating a ton there at the end.
Yeah, well, water too. It was interesting, but we had the tube. So at this time, like when we go to this visit, I mean, I think we all knew, the oncologist knew. I mean, our student oncologist, like she's such a busy lady, and yet she sat in there with him for, hours, just wanted to hold his hand. And so just, we're still feeding him at the time. And I think one of the hardest things we had to make in this situation is he was incredibly anemic, which makes sense. Like the cancer's taking over his body. And I just remember having to make, at this appointment, she's like, well, we can give him blood and it will help him maybe feel a little bit better, but his body just can't drain this. And so essentially having to choose how your son's going to die. Do you want him to die from anemia? I mean, obviously it's cancer. Do you want him to die from that? Or like the lungs could start filling up if he has too much fluid. And so that's
effectively drown.
I'm like, I can't make the decision. And I will tell you this day, even on his death certificate, it says ultimate cause of death, anemia. And I'm like, and we chose not to do the blood because I was like, the idea of drowning to me, I was like, well, that sounds worse.
Yeah.
But no parent should have to, you should never have to choose how your child's going to die.
That's right.
And it was.
Yeah, it was.
There's just not words for it.
It was so awful. And just to have it kind of, the realization hit that, so I thought it was, when they took us in and like they all lingered in a way that I was like, that's a little different. And then it hit me later. It's like, they all knew that was the last time they were going to get to see him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we had chose pretty early. Like Abram always wanted to be at home. So we tried, especially after we got put on hospice, like we only went in if we had to. We pretty much said we're not coming in. Because, we had someone coming to that house if we needed, pain meds and stuff. But for that, like because his body started to swell, she wanted to see him. And we wanted to be at home. He wanted to be at home.
Yeah. So whatever he wanted that was what was going to win.
Yeah.
But so we go home and they're like, we're like, do we keep feeding? Do we do, and they're like, just let him do what he wants to do. So all of a sudden he's got an appetite and we really had, and they were thinking days, and he made it almost 2 weeks from there, which we were like, man, he's such a fighter, and they really weren't awful. It wasn't an awful 2 weeks.
Till right before.
Till like maybe the last 2-3 days, and then he was in so much pain.
The day before he passed away was probably the worst. He was just awake all day and just incredibly agitated, and he was just in pain. And so that whole day was one of the hardest for me because he only wanted me. He didn't want anyone else in there, and of course, there was nowhere else I was going to be, but it was the drain of like, knowing he's about to die and having to take care of him and care for him at the same time. And it was exhausting. And it was interesting because the next day, he slept most of the day and was just very, more peaceful. He was awake a little bit. I think actually, but he's still, like, I think one of the last things he really said when he was awake is I went to go get him water. He's like, I can do it myself. And just wanted to do his own water that day. But for the most part that day, he slept and just was more peaceful, which was good. And when he passed away, so we were actually on the back porch with Jason Hallman. I will tell you, God's grace over that day and that night of how he orchestrated it, he is so evident.
Yeah.
We're sitting on the back porch eating some Wingstop, having some wine with Jason and
Wingstop and wine.
yes,
Yeah.
it totally goes together. Nice wine too, which
I'm sure.
probably shouldn't mix with
Wingstop. It's
Wingstop.
fine.
That doesn't.
You just do whatever you want on that night.
At this point it was fine. That's what I wanted. So we're sitting on the back porch just breathing for a minute while grandparents are in with Abram. And Jack's dad comes out to get us and said, Abram's squeezing my hands a lot. I think something's happening.
Okay.
So we go in there, and we could pretty quickly tell it was time.
It was, real serious. But I was just discombobulated because we had talked to some people who had watched a child pass, and we had the oncologist that kind of walked us through what that would look like, and I wasn't seeing.
Of course, Abram had to do it different.
Yeah, it was I was like, I don't know if this is the end, because what she said was it's going to look like this, and it really didn't. And then it was it was pretty quick.
I think that was the part that was the most surprising, because pretty much from the time his dad came to get us till the time Abram passed was maybe 30 minutes, if even.
Yeah.
And so, but I will tell you, so God's grace, first of all, Jason being there.
Yeah.
His wisdom in the moment of what to do, because there was one point, so, we had told the other kids at this point, God very well might just heal him in heaven, so we've had these conversations. Eli's in bed at this point, which is, I think, a grace of the Lord. He's 3, but the other two, Ezra and Abram, so it's Abram, Ezra, Jubilee, Eli. And so Ezra and Jubilee are still awake, and I want them to get to say bye. And so I tell Tom, Jack's dad, to go get them, and Jason's like, no, sister, you need to go get them. And to this day, my brain wasn't working. I was just not going to be anywhere next to Abram, but just the gift of God's calling Abram home. Me standing there for 5 more minutes isn't going to make a difference. But these kids, we're about to start a whole new journey with them that I need to carry them in. And so the gift of just that I was the one, hey, Abram's dying. If y'all want to come say bye. And we didn't make them, it was a choice, and they both wanted to, and they got to come say bye. And one of the last thing I said to him, and this was just Abram, and it's so the Lord, but I am hugging him and I'm leaning over and I say, run to Jesus, baby. He's going to heal you. And I'm not kidding. That kid sprinted. It was the Lord in that moment called him home. And it was just him. He's like, oh, run to Jesus. Okay. I'm going to run.
Yeah.
But even the gift, even after of Jason being there, because we're both there's so much shock.
Yeah.
Even obviously, it's coming, but at the same time, Jason's just hey, everyone else leave, because we had family in the room, and gave me and Jack a little bit of time. And I think everyone handles death different. For me, I kind of wanted to hold his hand for a little bit, but as soon as it started to get cold, I didn't.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a right or wrong there, but that was just very much my son's not there anymore. Yeah. I know where he is. Whereas you wanted, I think, a little bit more time with his body.
Yeah, it was so hard. It was just absolutely brutal. Just because all that hope in me, seeing the life leave his body was I was shattered in a way that I didn't know I could be. Even with, that hope's been picked away at as things get worse and worse, but I still hadn't even to the end, I hadn't given up.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, this is okay, Lord. Like, this is this is prime time. This is when you show up, and just to see him go. Yeah, like as weird as it was, at 22 months, I wasn't prepared for that transition, and just to like, it was hard when his body turned cold, and to know. I mean, like, just the physical nature of he's gone. Oh man, it's so hard.
Like, you're not supposed to feel your child like that. I mean,
No,
it's just, you're not.
that's right.
It's
Yeah,
broken.
he's supposed to bury me one day.
Yeah.
Not me say goodbye to him. And because the whole time as daddy, it's like, Lord, you take me. You do what you need to do. But you do it to me.
Yeah.
Not my boy. And he was gone. And so, yeah, we just
You wanted to carry him that last time. Like, that was
just
just the idea that it's the last time you're going to
Yeah.
carry your child.
Yeah, and it was. It's just, I tried to pick him up and I just lost it. And I knew it'd be the last time I'd hold him.
Yeah.
And, oh man, that's so hard. Yeah, it's just everything changed.
It's a hard, because it's hands down, like, there's nothing worse than that. And yet then still, like, I mean, like I was saying, like, I was there. I mean, I feel like I went above and beyond of how unique, like, Jason randomly stopped by. Like, it wasn't planned, like, just
And
the
we
way.
we didn't ask him to come by.
No, just the way that the Lord, like, I couldn't even try to be like, oh, like, God's, where are you,
Yeah.
Lord? Like, because he's like, I'm here. I mean, he was so evident. And so I needed that. And I think the Lord was very gracious to give that despite, the nightmare of it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Can we talk about a little bit about the last year? So Abram's celebration of life was epic. It was
Our whole home group put all that together too. Like, it was, I mean, we pretty much didn't have capacity, and we just, I mean, to see the church be the church again.
Yeah.
I mean, like, literally, it was all, everyone just, we kind of gave a few ideas, and I mean, it was above and beyond what I thought.
It was just incredible. And then, like when you get first diagnosed, the whole world's there. Whole world's, what can we do? We love you. How are you? But inevitably, things get quiet. And it's you two, and it's the 3 kids, and 1,000 memories of Abram all over the house. We talk about a little bit about the journey of the last year, and maybe the highs and lows with the Lord in that, and then we kind of end on where we are now, and I intentionally, I mean, you guys were who I thought of almost immediately when I thought of the idea of Overcomers, and I thought, oh shit, we are way too close to that. We've got to get space and time. And I even coming into season 2 was like, Lord, I still feel like we're really close. And so I'd love to hear about the last year, and I'd love for people to hear about the last year. I think the last year for you guys, in a very real way, has the heart of what this podcast is trying to do, with its highs and lows, and its good days and bad days, and good weeks and bad weeks, and barely hanging in there, swinging to, oh no, God's amazing, back to barely hanging in there. So I'd love to hear about the last year. And then I want to ask, for everyone that's listening, if you both have, like, if you could encourage them, and most people who are listening to this are not enduring what you've endured. They're doing something but it's probably not at the scale. In fact, even listening to this, they're probably like, this is so dumb. I'm just, I just have anxiety in there, but this, your journey can speak to that in a way that's, I think, helpful. So let's start here. Let's just start with the last years with the Lord, high and low, kind of what the last year's been like.
Yeah, so initially when he passes, you're in shock.
Yeah.
And I think the Lord gives us shock because it's so overwhelming what we're dealing with. We can't deal with it all.
Shock is a gift
Yeah.
to a degree. I mean,
Yeah, you don't need to stay there.
Yeah.
But just to process. So that first, so he passed away in September. So we just passed 2 years of him being gone. Those first few months, I remember. So I like to elk hunt, and usually one of my favorite things is to sit in the woods, and it's so quiet on the mountain. And I went. So I was like 3 or 4 weeks later on a hunt. I thought it'd be great to get out in the woods, but I remember being so overwhelmed with the silence, like because I could not handle it. I had to have something pumping into my ears because everything was so. I was beginning this wrestle with the Lord of. I was like, Lord, you were going to do it, and He did not say He was going to do it.
Yeah.
I was just so sure that He was, and I did not know how to deal with. You could have, and you didn't.
Yeah.
That doesn't reconcile with who I know the Lord to be. And I know there's brokenness, but it was like this. It's like, but this is Abram, so this is different.
Yeah.
And it wasn't different. And so just trying to throw, I think our circles, they had already shrunk quite a bit, but we needed super safe places to just be. And I couldn't deal with all the silly things that we say that are probably well-intended of, you just got to trust, you just got to, God is good. I'm like,
sending you just a random Bible verse. And I'm like, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. But there was like in that, when we were on it, I'm like, I couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was this weird, like, my foundation of who God was blew up.
Yeah. I think that's very true for both of us.
I'm ripping it down to the bottom because something was not right here. I put hope, like God did not say He was going to do this, but I treated Him like He would. And so I wanted to tear everything down and get to a place of like, who is the Lord then? If He's not this, I need to know who He is, because I can't put my faith in whatever that was that I was hanging on to. And so I needed safe places. I needed safe people. We continued. We weren't serving in anywhere, but we'd continue to go on Sundays, and I think for you it was easier than me.
Church felt safe for me, and it was not for you.
It wasn't safe for me. I was hearing these songs and messages where everything I'm having to filter through, like, okay, God, you say we're singing "You're mighty to save," but that's hitting me in the face about, but you didn't save my son. And like, that's not what that song's trying to communicate, but I'm just at war in my heart with the Lord, over like this. I just understood these things to mean this way, and that's not true.
Yeah.
I really have to find out what's true. And so I just started poking around, but I didn't want to spend time and, I didn't want to hear anything from Paul. I was like, I need to spend time with Job.
Yeah.
I want to read Exodus. I want I want to hang out in these spaces of just not understanding, contention, wrestle, fight. I was like, I want my night. Like, I want what Jacob got. I want to fight all night long, Lord, because I don't understand. Like, you are who you say you are, and you could have saved my son, and you didn't. And those are both true, and I don't know how to, and I still don't know how to reconcile that. But it was like this freeing up of, I got invited on Jeff Haley took me on a Way Forward trip. That was about 6 months after Abram had died, and just on the mountain, you're just kind of, you're not sleeping, you're tired, grouchy. And I was sharing, and it was the first time I could say, the Lord did not fail me, and he did not fail my son, but something did. And I was just really on a witch hunt of what failed me. Was it, I mean, I've been in church my whole life. I've been learning and reading, but I was not prepared for the loss of my son. And it really took me almost a year where I felt like the Lord, because I just wanted to tear down everything to figure it out. But the Lord just sweetly just like, hey, you weren't made for death. Mm-hmm. So this should be as terrible as it was. I didn't create you for this. And it kind of freed me up to not have an answer.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm all better or whatever, but that I needed that freedom to process there, because before the fall, he didn't make us for this. And I really I needed to fight. I needed to fight and wrestle. But yours looked a lot different that first year.
Yeah. I think for me, I think so much because I really did start mourning before. I didn't have that same, I think at the point I'm at when Abram died, he was in so much pain. Those last couple of weeks, I was asking the Lord, I can't watch him suffer anymore. Yeah. And so for me, there's the shock at first, and then honestly, a little bit of relief. Yeah. Just because I'm like, my son's not in pain. And we're just coming off of being exhausted. And so just to that beginning first 3 months, honestly, I think it was shock and a little bit of relief that Abram wasn't in pain. And obviously I would have preferred it the other way. But then for me, it got hard kind of after that, because as the shock wore off and I'm processing more, first of all, there's so much trauma that happened during that I still don't know that I processed all of it, because you can't when you're in it. I was told in counseling, I think this was great advice, was process as much as you can as you go through it. But we're not capable of processing that much trauma in that short of a period of time. And so I think that starts to come up, and that's obviously a wrestle. But then just more so, the further we got away from losing our son, the more I remember my healthy boy.
Yeah.
And that has continued to be harder. And so, this whole, the first year, honestly, for me, it was really hard because of the intense waves that would come. But yet, I don't feel I feel like with the Lord specifically, he felt very evident and close. And I will tell you, for me, it was the 1 year mark. I think so much of how I'm wired was if I can just get through this first year, I'm gonna lean hard on the Lord. If I can get through this first year, I'm gonna be okay. And I will tell you, that first week after we hit 1 year, of just how dark I got, because the day before I felt just as much pain the next. Yeah. And so to realize the endurance of this that I'm going to have, and that has been my biggest wrestle on this side of it. And I will tell you, this whole last year has been a wrestle there. It's not been pretty, and the Lord has shown up, but he's had to pursue me more so, where I've definitely run more to other things of just, okay, well, I tried real hard that first year to, run to you. Church was really good, which church on this side has similar to what he had the first year, singing certain songs and stuff. And I was at recovery last night and they were singing a song and I was like, I can't sing this.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's about, giving the Lord everything for more of him. And I'm like, I don't want you to take anything else from me.
Yeah.
That's just honestly, like, I'm still there. And so this whole last year, but like at the same time, and I think both of us very much, our faith like had to be taken back down to the studs. And that's looked different, but as we're trying to rebuild it, of just, I think maybe it's because like the American, just dream kind of mixed in with church to a degree, but of just this like idea of, oh, I'm going to follow God and everything's going to be great, which I would have told you before is not true. I mean, I hear that often, but yet so much of our lives, like it was until this happens. And so all of a sudden having to reconcile that for both of us has been hard. And yet I will tell you, my relationship with the Lord now is much more deep. It's much more intimate. It is, I still would not tell you I would give my son for it. And I know that's probably not like the Christianese, that's not the right answer. I would never like give my son for it. And yet I'm thankful for it. But
Okay.
so, but yeah, this last year for me, I'm still, we just hit the 2-year mark last week.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I'm through the second year, because that whole, it was just marked for me by this realization of the endurance that I'm going to have.
Yeah.
And battling on how to do that and how to do it well. And like I said earlier, a lot of days I'm in bed. I'm not very functional, but then there's days that we fight. There's days we laugh. There's days, there's joy. The gift of our other kids is one of the sweetest things God has given me in this, because I'm going to fight like hell for them because they're looking at us. They're looking at us, and this is their story too. This is going to impact their whole lives. And so for me as their mom, I'm like, I'm going to fight for the Lord because of what I want for them. And so having to navigate that, and my goal is always, and I think when we talk about our story, we really are messy. If you sat with us on a daily basis, like it is messy and there is grimy. And I think what marks both of us ultimately in our marriage and our family is we fight for more good days than bad.
Yeah.
And I think if you can do that, like, that's the projection, like obviously, and the hope is just more and more of that. And so, that's kind of where.
Yeah. But, and I think you said it right, but just the monster grief is in processing and learning how to do that. And it is a literal guttural fight. Cause it's not linear. It makes no sense. And then the roughness of it. We've talked about it before, like, just the only way is through, like, and what that means is that you, as those waves hit, is you need to fully embrace them, and they're brutally hard, and it's lots of tears. Cause you just lamenting these different things, and it could be any number of, memories or whatever, and something that's triggering that doesn't make any sense. But something I was trying to find some healthy rhythms, just building for me, but I wasn't processing the grief. I wouldn't say I was actively trying to stuff it, but I wouldn't sit in those moments, and it was
actually stuffing's my role.
Yeah. But I remember it scared me. I was at a football game, and this is probably almost a little less than a year after Abram had passed, and I was so pent up. The guys in front of us rooting for the other team, and they said something. These dudes are big. They're all tatted up. They're watching a UFC fight at the same time. Like, not guys you want to. Sure. And he said something, and in less than a second, I had made the decision. It's like, I will go as far as you're willing to go here. Yeah. And like I was like, and I wanted it. And nothing happened. Thankfully, that would not been good. But it scared me, because I was like, man, I was willing to make a decision that put me in jail, put me in all kind of things that's not worth it for me or my family. So I had to figure out. I was like, I need counseling. I need something to help me. Yeah.
Counseling's been huge for both of us. this side of it.
Yeah, the biggest, you can't process these things alone, and we need to process with people, not each other.
Yeah.
Because it's a burden. Because up until Abram got sick, usually somebody's in a better spot than the other in marriage, and you can kind of lean on each other. And this was too much for us to bear, so I had to go counseling. I've got my guy, just men I trust, and just where I could be angry and lament and question, and I'm not looking for answers, because what I realized was I don't Jesus came down himself and told me what the answer is. I'm not sure that's good enough. I'm almost ready to say that wouldn't be good enough because it cost me my son. So I don't want an answer, but I want the wrestle. And what was so odd to me and surprising was the more undone I felt, the more I felt welcomed by the Lord, because it was this.
It's very true.
I was like, I'm a complete mess. I can't control my mouth. I can't control my actions. I am just undone. And I felt like the Lord just,
You're my mess.
Yeah, you're my mess. You're,
Come on.
And which I tried so hard to, and for the most part, I was very successful at. I could control my behavior, control my speech.
Most of your life.
Most of my
Been marked
life,
by that.
like this is the way this should look, and this is the way I should act. And I think most of it was genuine, but with that kind of searing pain on my soul, I could not contain that anymore. And my speech reflected that, and still does. I'm not saying that's great, but I'm like, this is the best I got.
Yeah.
And to have the Lord be like, yeah, you're mine.
Yeah.
And just
Despite us.
yeah, just the surprise in that for me, because I was just I was always trying to work so hard to,
Perform.
just trying to be what I feel like I'm called to be. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that anymore. And I still struggle with it, but there's a freedom there to be undone and be fully loved and welcomed that surprised me in a very sweet way.
Yeah, the Lord, ultimately, I think for both of us, we've gotten to a point where he is safe. Like, there's still a lot of stuff we're wrestling with, but the Lord is safe.
Yeah.
And that, it's taken time to get there, but I think that's it's a gift. And
Yeah.
I don't
even like saying to get there. We're still trying to
still in it.
Whatever
we're
that
definitely
is.
still
Whatever
in it.
there is.
Yeah.
In season 1, I was interviewing a young woman named Katie, and one of the things she said, and it's kind of, as a theologian, it's kind of haunted me. She said just grew up in a horrific circumstance, hard to get the mind around circumstance. And she said, there's no explanation of this that you'll ever be able to give me that gets God off the hook. But I trust him and I know that he's good.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'm not trying to get him off the hook. I'm positioning my life under his grace and his glory, and I'm trusting that one day maybe I'll understand it.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to forget that little sentence that day. There's no version, there's no explanation you're gonna be able to give me that makes me go, oh, okay, that's why.
That makes it work, yeah.
Yeah. But then again, I think in literally the same breath, to transition to, but I'm moving towards him.
Yep.
And I believe I'm going to be okay. And I'm not out of it yet, but I trust that he's near. And I just think it's the most powerful thing in the world. I think it's far more powerful than having a clean explanation.
I agree.
Yeah, I just think it is. And I think most often, people who don't believe that talk about suffering theoretically more. And I'm sure there's somebody listening right now like, well, I land there and I've been through it too. So I'm saying mostly my experience is that people who get pretty dogmatic about the hows and whys tend to talk about suffering theoretically and haven't really been into the dark night of the soul.
It's been interesting on this side. People that have suffered are really who are safe. I mean, it's
because you don't get those cheap
You don't
little,
get-
No.
like you don't. I guess we didn't realize how unloving it was to hear some of those things from someone who didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
until you go through it. And it's, I mean, I've done that. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
been on that side.
Well,
I mean,
and I've
it's
always
human
been
nature.
gracious. They just, they don't know that the best thing is probably to not say anything.
yeah.
to
Or
bring,
just, hey, that really sucks. Like that for me was
bring
such
some wings and some good
Yeah.
wine
Yeah.
and let's sit on the back patio.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
It's been a hard episode. I know for the listener, I know certainly for the sharer, but for the listener, would you have any, just as we close out our time, I mean, most of the people that are dialing into this, and probably not all of them, but most of them, man, they're kind of grasping for hope in whatever they're in, whatever season they're in, wherever they are in. You know, you could be catching them on a day where they pressed play because this is like, if the Lord doesn't help me here, I'm done. You got their ears. Would there be anything that you want to say where you are in this part of the journey to encourage them listening in their own journey, in their own struggle, or and if it's easier, then there are going to be a lot of moms and dads whose children are sick and suffering that their friends are going to send them this. And they're like, hey, this might encourage you. This might be a terrible idea, but why don't you listen to this? And I wonder what you might even say to them.
So, Abram's funeral, celebration of life, like I was able to sing wholeheartedly a bunch of songs. Like I was thinking about my son and his God songs. I really hadn't been able to sing ever since. It was just, I just cry.
Yeah.
But I was just struck by, and with some help of friends I trust, like I was just like, I'd really like to try and sing. So I gathered with some men I trusted, and they had their own issues, and it was like, hey, we're gonna try and sing this. And one of the things shared during that time was, one of the guys read, he's like, hey, I'm just feeling like just sing a new song. And what that did, like I guess, like I am forever changed with the loss of my son. And I shouldn't keep trying to go back to a place that I'm new.
That's
I can't sing from that anymore. Yeah. And what he was saying is, I'm encouraging you to sing from where you are.
Yeah.
And so that would be my encouragement. Don't, like, life is different. Life is forever changed. But the Lord knows that. And yeah, stop fighting to get back to somewhere you're never going to be again.
Yeah.
But sing from that new spot.
Yeah.
And it was still a struggle. Like, it wasn't anything magical about trying to sing with, it was a special, reverent time, and I'm so grateful for those men be available for that. But just to say, be where you are, and if you are as broken and hurt and messy, just be there, and don't need to apologize for it. Don't need to be on the other side of it, and just find some, people you can link arms with that are trustworthy, and do the best you can. And it's the Lord's with you, and there's so much. He's just His grace toward. I mean, there's no hiding it anyway. And that's what kind of get over. It's like, I've been here waiting on you, and just to be freed up to be exactly who you are, and being known by the Father and welcomed anyway.
Well, and something you said earlier that's, I think, so profound in this is, like, you might be a mess, but you are the Lord's mess.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to that. And again, you've said some things here today that I hope people really, like, it's the stuff that sticks. Like, yeah, like you can go your whole life and everything just go your way. And then stuff like this, it invades, and it invades quickly out of nowhere. And the idea that you're supposed to be put together, or that everything is up and to the right, is just asinine. It's absurd. It's certainly not in the Bible. You can't find a story in the Bible that says it is. There's something in the Western ethos in particular that says life is up and to the right.
Yeah.
And I think what's so devastating to people when they are a mess is the compulsion to hide it until they can't, or the compulsion to give in to shame because you're a mess, and then doubt the goodness of God are really powerful. They're really powerful forces. They're demonic forces.
Yeah.
And to be okay saying, no, I'm a freaking train wreck right now, but I'm his train wreck.
Yeah.
This is what he was buying on the cross.
Yeah.
This version of me,
Yeah.
not the one I was presenting that had all their crap together. This is the one he wanted. This is what he purchased. And then that starts to reframe God's love altogether.
Yeah.
It makes God's love what it is, divine. Like,
It's sweeter.
unlike anything ever, anywhere.
Yeah.
Like that's what he wants, that moment. The broken and contrite in spirit I will never despise.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so I think for me, and actually it kind of piggybacks on that, is, and I share this because this is where I wrestle. So when I get dark, when I'm struggling, I isolate.
yeah.
I mean, that is, I go in. I feel really tired. I feels too hard to do stuff, and I pull away.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, whether it's a sick kid, whether it's, I mean, wherever someone's at, the value of finding good people and to fight like hell to keep them near, to share. And I speak to this with so much conviction, because I will tell you, over the last month, like, this is where I've failed, and I've gotten to that dark place where the shame creeps in, where it's because I've isolated.
Yeah.
Because I was struggling, and it just felt too hard to do anything else. And yet I can see consistently over the last 2 years, when I am walking better and more consistently with people who love the Lord, who are safe, who I can be as messy as I am.
Yeah.
And we're very fortunate to have people like that, which is
Y'all's
a gift.
crew is
Yeah. And yet
superb.
I know some people don't. And so just even then saying, I mean, find it. Like even just asking the Lord for it, like, that is something he wants you to ask. It's something he wants you to have. And I think he is gracious to provide it, but there's a part on us of having to go after it. Like, I can't just, I mean, not that there's so many people over the last month that I tell you I could have reached out to. I mean, I have a million, not a million, but I have a good handful of people that would drop at a hat to come be with me. And yet I wasn't fighting. Like, I gave over to that darkness. And thankfully that is less days than, being in the fight. And yet I think it's essential to get through this. Like, this world is messy, and this world is hard, and we were not designed to do it by ourselves. We can't. I mean, it is such a playground for Satan. When I isolate, I mean, it just creeps in the darkness and the shame, and why can't I just get my shit together? I mean, like, that's where I land, and I spiral there, and that's it's not good. That's not from the Lord. And so, that would be mine. Like, being in the fight, just if there's one step you could take right now, would be, find your people. Meet with them. I mean, and sometimes for me that has to be like, I need to set it up every week, because you know what's going to happen if I don't? Like, it's going to be a bad day, and I'm not going to go. So I need the consistency. Whereas I think Jack goes after that stuff the way he's wired more so than me. But find your people. We need them.
And so maybe you're listening to this right now, and maybe the best thing you could possibly do for yourself is, my guess is you're listening to this on your phone. So maybe the best thing you do is just pull over the car, or pause the treadmill, or whatever you're doing, and just send a text. And I mean, you can just send, "Hey, I'm slipping," to your people, or, "Oh crap," I don't know. I just, it can be simple, and then create space. I think people are one of the ways the Lord tangibly, physically touches, draws near, and helps and heals is through the saints.
Yep.
It's just the way he does it. It's his design. So that is a necessity in season and out of season. In fact, in peacetime, if you're listening to this and you're in peacetime, I would just cultivate that, because eventually, you live long enough, you're going to need it. And then if you're in the soup right now and you just like, oh crap, man, I don't have anybody like that. Like no one knows. I don't have anybody. Then in all seriousness, and you've heard me say this, find a church that has a recovery ministry. They at least have, if they have a recovery ministry, they have some framework for struggle and some framework for needing to walk in the light and it being okay that you are where you are. And so if you're like, oh man, it's too late, I got nobody, Google your area with a church with a recovery ministry, and I think you got a shot there to walk into a place and just be like, I'm barely hanging in there. I don't know how much longer I can do this, and I think the Lord will meet you there. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Overcomers. As always, Jack and Ashlee, thank you. I know, again, you got to share all this. In some ways, you got to live through it again. And so it's not lost on me that you were willing to come on and spend an hour, however long we've been chatting in here, talking about Abram. And what a gift he really was.
He was.
So, yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.